What's up everyone, and welcome back to another discussion video. This series will be a discussion of Dragon Ball characters who have either been left behind, poorly treated, or just have tons of wasted potential. This could either be because of their importance diminishing over time, their character completely changing, or aspects of their character being overlooked for no good reason whatsoever. We'll be analyzing the good parts of the character, as well as what went wrong, and what could have or should have been done with them. Today, we'll be talking about the first antagonist of Dragon Ball Z, someone who is all but forgotten today in Dragon Ball media, someone with a glorious head of hair, and that of course is Raditz. Let's begin. So, obviously not every character in a show or manga has to be completely fleshed out with a backstory, personality, all that kind of stuff. Like for example, someone like Pui Pui, Yakon, Spopovich, or Yamu from the Buu Saga. It's perfectly fine having minor villains that don't really have a backstory or purpose besides supporting the main villain. Like, who really cares about Yakon? I bet some of you don't even know who Yakon is. I don't blame you. Are there even any Yakon fans out there? I'm sure there are. Anyways, I would say the same for Raditz about him not needing a backstory because he kinda is just like a minor supporting villain, but he's a special case. Raditz is a minor villain really, and he's not the main threat of the Saiyan saga at all. However, Raditz has a few more things going for him that make his potential kinda wasted. First off, he's the first villain in Dragon Ball Z. Now, the manga just continued like normal and he was just another Dragon Ball villain, but at the point where his debut happened in the manga, or when Dragon Ball Z started, it basically splits Dragon Ball into a completely new era. Aliens, space empires, insanely fast speeds and fights, planet-busting feats, and all that kind of stuff. So much more. Like we go from Goku fighting a demon guy, to Goku finding out that both he and that demon guy are aliens. DBZ is a completely different animal than the original Dragon Ball series, or at least the chapters that came before Raditz's arrival. And you'd expect the first villain of this era to be a bit more consequential, right? Well, Raditz more so ends up acting as a messenger to say the Saiyans are coming. And you know the old phrase, don't shoot the messenger. But Piccolo did just that. A real big goof on his part. He shot the messenger. Now, that's not to say the Saiyan Saga or DBZ had a bad start. It's really only Raditz that suffers from this issue, not the saga as a whole. He is the first villain to debut this entirely new era. Like, look at Dragon Ball Z Kai, which is more accurate to the manga. Raditz dies in the 3rd episode. He wasn't even in each episode in its entirety, so he's basically only around for 2 episodes. That's honestly kinda sad. Considering how big of a jump it is from DB to DBZ, you'd expect the villain to be more intimidating, impactful, and probably stick around longer. But he's gone just like that. My man Raditz even helped kickstart one of the biggest memes in the Dragon Ball community by interacting with that farmer with a shotgun. Now, I mean, it is kinda dated, but it's pretty popular still. People only want to appreciate the farmer, not my boy Raditz. I don't get it. Joking aside, that whole thing about him being the first villain isn't even my main gripe with Raditz. My biggest gripe with him is the way that his character is written, and it's not because he has no backstory, it's because he does have a backstory. A backstory which is way more important than you expect for a small villain like him. It's the fact that he's Goku's brother. Now, I'm not saying that just because he's Goku's brother means that he should stay alive and stay around for the entire series, and have a whole arc like someone like Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan, anyone like that. Far from it. My main issue is the fact that he was given that role at all, considering how inconsequential that fact is. The only real purpose for him being Goku's brother is to serve as shock value. This alien from somewhere far away is threatening the planet, and then it turns out he's the older brother of the main character, the monkey boy who was orphaned for most of his life, whose past we know nothing about. If you want to count filler stuff, we already have Bardock, who's technically canon now anyways, despite all the prior filler, but that doesn't mean we have to discount the filler stuff. But canon or not, that's besides the point. We had him get more development, which is nice, and he is the guy who fathered Goku, so it makes sense that he would. As well as saving Goku and, depending on which version you're watching, the guy who stood up against Frieza. He was given some story at least, and had a purpose for being introduced as Goku's father, so it makes sense to make this guy related to him. But then for Raditz, he's just Goku's brother. That's it. There's nothing built upon it. His purpose could have been fulfilled by literally any other Saiyan if you think about it. Like yeah, it's cool that he's related to Goku, but he comes to Earth to find Kakarot and get another Saiyan to join them. But when you really think about it, that could have been done by anyone as long as they knew that Goku existed. One simple change to the plot making it so some other Saiyans know of his survival would mean Raditz's role as Goku's brother is basically useless. he could have been just some random Saiyan military member and done the same job. He could have been Nappa. He could have been literally any Saiyan, but it's decided that he's Goku's brother, and there's no payoff to that key character point whatsoever. It doesn't really sit right with me. And in terms of being a villain, he's not even that important in the grand scheme of things. After he dies, he's mentioned a few times in the Saiyan saga, and he has a couple flashbacks here and there, but after that, he's basically forgotten entirely. After Namek, nothing. Beyond that point, he only has 2 cameos in Dragon Ball Super. I mean, unless you want to count one really brief cameo he had in Dragon Ball GT, where he's a background character that you could barely see, covered by Android 19 of all people, and then Cooler. They don't even think he's important enough to put in the foreground. He's in the background just as a smudge on the screen. It's kind of funny. But in Super, he's in a filler episode where Goku and Krillin fight their past foes, but everyone else is there too, so it's not really that big of a deal. In Dragon Ball Super Broly, he appears, and his cameo is actually pretty nice and funny. We see him as a kid on a mission with Vegeta and Nappa on some planet, and he's also mentioned by Bardock and Guinea, of course. It's nice that he at least got some love there, even if it was just sitting around after massacring some aliens and talking about his brother, a kinda chill appearance for him. But it's kinda sad when you consider that that's the first cameo that Raditz has in probably decades where he actually has a speaking line. But other than that, Raditz is never brought up at all. Even Bardock, who Goku has never met or knows existed, has been brought up both directly or indirectly. During the Namek arc, he's referenced a few times, and even in something like DBZ Movie 8, the original Broly movie, he's mentioned there. But Raditz, Goku's brother, the guy he actually met, was threatened by, and the guy Goku died with, is never brought up again by Goku, or anyone for that matter. As I've been saying, it makes no sense to make him Goku's brother if you're not going to do anything with that plot point. There's no purpose for it. There's so much potential here for another Saiyan in canon who's been with Vegeta and Nappa for decades, like showing anything that he's done in that time, but unfortunately we get nothing. Actually, there is one spin-off manga called Dragon Ball SD, where Raditz does have a part where he kinda does that, and it shows Vegeta, Nappa, and him just being Saiyans and hanging around doing Saiyan stuff. As for me, I really do like Raditz. That's honestly why I chose to cover him first for this series. He has a cool design, cool attacks with a nice naming scheme, and he acts as a nice parallel to Goku when he's introduced. And when you think about it, he's one of the most important characters in the series. Without him, Goku wouldn't be found by Vegeta and Nappa. That would mean no Frieza, and basically nothing after that. The real only thing that would happen is the Android saga probably, and that would still be completely different and everyone would just die. There would be no introduction to the Saiyans, any other aliens, all the space travel, nothing. It's all because Raditz knew Goku was on Earth and went to go find him. For all of that, that's really why it's surprising to me that he's so inconsequential in scale after introduced. Like I said, the issue isn't that he's not fleshed out. The issue is that he has some traits that would make it seem like he'd be fleshed out or important in the future, only for him to amount to absolutely nothing and never be mentioned again. In terms of what they could have done with him, potentially a lot of things. As I mentioned, one thing I'd like to see with him that wouldn't actually mess up canon is having him get some development or some scenes of him with Vegeta and Nappa back when they were together. Not only would it be cool to see Raditz, but seeing the 3 Saiyans under the orders of Frieza as they're basically the last survivors of the Saiyan race would make for some potentially cool stories. While the entirety of Dragon Ball was going on, somewhere off in another part of space, these 3 were having their own lives unfold with some potentially interesting plot points or events that could be shown. We have seen them in action before on rare occasions, and maybe having a look into the past of these 3 Saiyans would be pretty interesting as a side story in the manga or something. And it's not like it wouldn't serve any purpose at all, because doing this would involve one of the main characters of the show, Vegeta, and would basically be showing his life during the events of Dragon Ball, which would be kinda cool. Kinda like how we saw Goku, Krillin, and Bulma alongside some others, we could see the trio of Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz, which could also develop Nappa as well somewhat. That way, it would make Raditz a little bit more relevant, as well as giving Vegeta some interesting stories from his past, whenever he was a kid or a teenager. However, there is a bright side to this, and that's the community. Raditz, of course, has appeared in Dragon Ball Heroes and Dragon Ball Xenoverse, but hasn't really done much else. By the way, have you seen his Super Saiyan 3 form? It's just what you'd expect. But the Dragon Ball community itself has actually been pretty accepting of Raditz, and has shown a lot of love towards him recently. Like, take a look at YouTube alone. A lot of you know me from my What If videos, and one very popular thing I've seen multiple YouTubers doing with Raditz is putting him in certain scenarios where he actually is alive and crucial to the story. I mean, I've even done it myself, like 2 or 3 times I think. A lot of these scenarios made by fans with Raditz have made him a lot more well-liked in recent times, which is great because I love seeing more fan art of him. I mean, just look at that amazing hair. It seems that a lot of the community has been warming up to Raditz, and seeing him how I kinda see him now. A badass Saiyan with great hair, with some great move names, and a lot of potential which has gone to waste. I mean, personally to me, naming the attacks after days of the week sounds pretty cool. At least, Raditz is slowly climbing to the top again. Next time, we'll be covering 2 younger characters that were relevant at one point, however have been relegated to being background characters in recent times. They fused, fought main villains, and are the sons of the main protagonist, and one of them has another version of himself who's more important and loved than him. As you can probably tell, I'm talking about Goten and Trunks, and you'll see me talk about them on the next episode of Missed Opportunities. Do you guys like Raditz? Who else do you think has a lot of wasted potential? Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, if you liked the video, remember to drop a like and subscribe, as well as hitting the bell icon to get notifications for all of my future videos. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.